I'm Marina Brooks, 47 years old, and I spent 15 years building the most efficient shipping logistics operation on the West Coast, only to watch my own company destroy my career with a single lie. But what they did to cover it up was even worse. If you've ever been stabbed in the back by people you trusted with your professional life, please let me know where you're watching from and subscribe to join others who understand this kind of corporate betrayal. The smell of diesel fuel and salt air used to energize me every morning as I walked through the gates of Pacific Maritime Solutions. The constant hum of container cranes, the rhythmic beeping of forklifts backing up, the controlled chaos of a working port, this was my world. I started here in 2008, fresh out of my logistics management program, ready to prove that a woman could not only survive but thrive in the male-dominated shipping industry. The port of Long Beach stretched out before me like a massive puzzle waiting to be solved, and I was determined to master every piece. My first day, I remember walking into the operations center, a converted warehouse with concrete floors that echoed every footstep and industrial lighting that cast harsh shadows across rows of computer terminals. The air conditioning struggled against the California heat seeping through metal walls, and the constant radio chatter from crane operators created a soundtrack of organized urgency. My supervisor, Rick Kowalski, was a 30-year veteran who looked at me like I was another college kid who'd wash out in 6 months. Think you can handle coordinating vessel arrivals when captains are screaming at you in 3 different languages? He asked, not even looking up from his manifest sheets. I told him I'd been studying Mandarin, Spanish, and basic maritime terminology for 2 years. He finally looked up, raised an eyebrow, and handed me a radio. "Let's see what you're made of, Brooks." That first year was brutal. 12-hour shifts coordinating container movements, managing trucking schedules, and somehow keeping track of cargo worth millions of dollars as it flowed through our terminal. The learning curve felt vertical, understanding customs regulations, federal shipping requirements, union protocols, and the delicate dance of international trade timelines. But I had something that couldn't be taught. I genuinely loved the complexity. While other coordinators saw chaos, I saw patterns. Where they saw problems, I saw solutions waiting to be implemented. My mentor, Elena Vasquez, the terminal's senior operations manager, noticed. She was one of only 3 women in management roles across the entire company, and she became my guide through the industry's unwritten rules. Elena taught me that success in shipping wasn't just about moving containers efficiently, it was about building relationships with everyone from longshoremen to customs officials to ship captains who'd been navigating these waters for decades. She showed me how to read the subtle signs of weather delays, equipment failures, and labor disputes before they became disasters. "Your job isn't just logistics, Marina," she'd tell me during our weekly mentoring sessions in her cramped office overlooking the container yards. "Your job is being the person everyone trusts to solve problems they didn't even know they had yet." Elena had fought her way up from the docks herself, starting as a crane operator before earning her management degree at night school. She understood the unique challenges women faced in this industry, and she made sure I was prepared for all of them. By my 3rd year, I was managing vessel turnaround times that had improved by 30% under my coordination. The company's efficiency ratings with major shipping lines reached record highs. I developed a computerized tracking system that predicted port congestion 3 days in advance, allowing us to reroute cargo and prevent costly delays. My innovation caught the attention of corporate leadership, and suddenly I was being invited to quarterly board meetings in the downtown Los Angeles headquarters, a gleaming tower that felt like another planet compared to our industrial port operations. The golden period started in year 5 when I was promoted to senior logistics coordinator, managing operations for the entire West Coast shipping network. My annual performance reviews were flawless. I was featured in Maritime Industry Weekly magazine as one of tomorrow's port leaders. The company sent me to international shipping conferences in Rotterdam and Singapore, where I presented our efficiency improvements to industry executives. My salary had doubled since I started. I had a team of 12 coordinators reporting to me, and for the first time in my career, I felt genuinely secure. This wasn't just a job anymore, it was my professional identity built on 15 years of 60-hour weeks and unwavering dedication. But even during those successful years, there were subtle warning signs I should have recognized. The company had been acquired by a larger conglomerate, Meridian Global Logistics, in 2019. The new owners brought their own management style, more corporate, more focused on quarterly profits than long-term relationships. They installed new executives who spoke in business school buzzwords and seemed more interested in spreadsheets than the actual movement of cargo. Our monthly staff meetings shifted from operational discussions to presentations about synergistic optimization and right-sizing human capital. Elena warned me privately that these changes never ended well for people who'd built their careers under the old system. The first real red flag came during a supposedly routine quarterly review meeting in early 2023. James Morrison, our new regional director, suggested that my shipping coordination methods were perhaps a bit old-fashioned for our evolving operational paradigm. He questioned whether my close relationships with union leaders and dock workers were aligned with corporate efficiency objectives. I dismissed his concerns. My results spoke for themselves, but I should have paid more attention when he started asking detailed questions about my daily processes, my relationships with shipping line contacts, and the specific software systems I'd developed over the years. The day that changed everything started like any other Tuesday morning in March 2023. I arrived at the terminal at 5:30 a.m., my usual time, to prepare for the arrival of 3 container ships scheduled throughout the day. The morning fog was just lifting off the harbor, and the familiar sounds of the port beginning its daily operations filled the air. I grabbed my coffee from the break room, the same industrial-strength brew that had fueled my mornings for 15 years, and settled into my workstation to review overnight vessel updates and customs clearances. My assistant David Park was already coordinating with the crane operators, and everything appeared to be running smoothly. I had no idea that within 8 hours my entire career would be in ruins, destroyed by people I'd trusted with my professional life for over a decade. The crisis began with what seemed like a routine phone call at 2:15 p.m. Captain Rodriguez from the MSC Patricia was reporting unexpected delays that would push their arrival from 4 p.m. to nearly 7 p.m., right into the evening shift changeover. This kind of delay wasn't unusual, but it required immediate coordination with the longshoremen's union, trucking companies, and customs officials to prevent a cascade of scheduling problems that could back up operations for days. I immediately started making calls, leveraging relationships I'd built over 15 years to keep cargo moving efficiently. Within an hour, I'd negotiated overtime approvals, rerouted 3 trucking schedules, and coordinated with evening shift supervisors to ensure seamless operations. It was exactly the kind of problem-solving that had built my reputation in this industry. But at 4:45 p.m., as I was finishing the coordination efforts, James Morrison appeared at my workstation with 2 people I didn't recognize, a woman in an expensive suit carrying a legal pad and a man who looked like corporate security. The noise of the terminal seemed to fade as Morrison cleared his throat and said words that still echo in my mind. "Marina, we need to talk in the conference room immediately. There's been a serious allegation regarding your handling of today's vessel coordination." My stomach dropped as I realized that my 15 years of flawless performance reviews and industry recognition were about to be tested in a way I'd never imagined. The woman with the legal pad introduced herself as Rebecca Walsh from Human Resources, and her first question made it clear that this wasn't about delayed ships or scheduling conflicts. Someone had accused me of accepting kickbacks from shipping lines in exchange for preferential berthing assignments, a federal crime that could destroy not just my career but my freedom. As I followed them toward the conference room, passing colleagues who suddenly couldn't make eye contact, I felt the first chill of realization that this wasn't a misunderstanding that could be cleared up with a simple explanation. The woman from HR was already taking notes about my reaction, and Morrison's expression had shifted from professional concern to something that looked almost like satisfaction. Elena Vasquez caught my eye from across the operations floor and gave me a barely perceptible nod, the same signal she'd taught me years ago when navigating difficult conversations with difficult people. But this time I was completely alone, facing allegations that could end everything I'd spent 15 years building. The accusations were as specific as they were devastating. According to the complaint filed that morning, I had allegedly been taking cash payments from Pacific Shipping Lines in exchange for guaranteeing their vessels priority berthing positions during peak season, a practice that would violate federal maritime regulations and constitute criminal bribery. The evidence, Morrison explained with barely concealed satisfaction, included emails from my company account, bank records showing suspicious deposits, and testimony from a Pacific Shipping Lines executive who claimed I'd solicited the payments during a meeting in Long Beach 6 months earlier. As Rebecca Walsh laid out the allegations with clinical precision, I felt my professional world collapsing around me. But here's what they didn't know. I'd been documenting everything for the past 6 months, ever since Morrison started questioning my methods. Every email, every phone call, every meeting had been logged and backed up because Elena had taught me that in corporate environments, documentation was survival. As I listened to their accusations, I realized that someone had been very carefully setting me up, using my own dedication and relationships against me. The bank deposits they referenced were my quarterly performance bonuses, deposited on the same schedule they'd followed for 5 years. The emails from my account had been sent after hours, when I was provably off-site attending my daughter's soccer games. And the Pacific Shipping Line's executive making the accusation, I'd never met him in my life. The next 4 hours in that conference room were the longest of my professional career. They wanted me to resign immediately, sign a non-disclosure agreement, and accept a severance package that would prevent me from working in maritime logistics for 3 years. In exchange, they wouldn't press charges or report the allegations to federal authorities. It was presented as a generous offer, a way to preserve my reputation and move forward professionally. But every question they asked, every document they produced, every witness they cited only strengthened my growing certainty that this was an elaborate setup designed to remove me from my position. The real question was why. The answer came when Morrison accidentally let slip that they'd already identified my replacement, someone with fresh perspectives on operational efficiency who could modernize our approach to shipping coordination. When I pressed for details, Rebecca Walsh quickly changed the subject, but the damage was done. They weren't investigating misconduct, they were manufacturing grounds for termination. My 15 years of loyalty, my industry expertise, my relationships with union leaders and shipping executives had become liabilities in their corporate efficiency equation. I was being eliminated not for poor performance but because I represented the old way of doing business in an industry they wanted to revolutionize with cheaper labor and automated systems. By 9 p.m., I was walking out of the terminal for what I thought might be the last time, carrying a box of personal items and a suspension letter pending completion of the investigation. The evening shift was in full operation, cranes moving containers under industrial floodlights, trucks queuing for cargo pickup, the controlled chaos I'd spent 15 years orchestrating continuing without me. Elena found me in the parking lot, her face grim with an anger I'd rarely seen. "This isn't about misconduct, Marina," she said quietly, glancing around to make sure we weren't overheard. "This is about Morrison cleaning house before the Meridian integration is complete. You know too much about how this operation really works, and that makes you dangerous to their corporate restructuring plans." She handed me a flash drive, everything I could legally copy about Morrison's communications with Meridian executives over the past 6 months, she explained. "I've been documenting the integration planning meetings you weren't invited to. They're planning to eliminate 40% of senior staff and replace them with Meridian personnel at lower salaries. Your position was already earmarked for elimination, they just needed cause to avoid paying severance for 15 years of service." Elena had been my mentor for over a decade, and she was risking her own career to give me the information I'd need to fight back. "Don't let them destroy you, Marina. This industry needs people like you, and what they're doing is illegal as hell." That night, I sat in my home office reviewing the contents of Elena's flash drive while my family slept. Email chains between Morrison and Meridian executives revealed a systematic plan to eliminate long-term employees across all terminals. My name appeared on multiple lists, marked for performance-based termination with cause to minimize severance exposure. The federal bribery allegations weren't the result of an investigation, they were the culmination of a 6-month effort to create grounds for firing me without compensation. Morrison had been building the case systematically, documenting my relationships with shipping line executives and union leaders as evidence of inappropriate vendor relationships and potential corruption. But as I read deeper into the communications, I discovered something even more disturbing. The Pacific Shipping Line's executive who'd accused me of soliciting bribes was actually Morrison's brother-in-law, recently hired into a position he wasn't qualified for. The suspicious bank deposits they'd flagged were legitimate bonuses, but Morrison had deliberately misrepresented their timing and source in his report to HR. Most damaging of all, several emails discussed using my case as a template for cleaning house across all terminals. My destruction was meant to be a warning to other long-term employees who might resist the corporate restructuring. The next morning, I called an employment attorney Elena had recommended, Sarah Kim, who specialized in maritime industry cases. After reviewing the evidence Elena had provided, she was incredulous. They've essentially documented their own conspiracy to commit wrongful termination, she explained during our emergency meeting. But here's the problem: Meridian Global has unlimited legal resources and they're betting you can't afford to fight them. Most employees in your situation take the severance package and disappear quietly. She outlined my options: accept the deal and sign the NDA, or prepare for a legal battle that could take years and cost everything I had saved for retirement. That's when I realized the true scope of their strategy. They weren't just eliminating my position, they were systematically destroying the careers of every employee who understood how the shipping industry actually worked. Morrison's integration plan called for replacing experienced coordinators with recent college graduates who would follow corporate protocols without questioning inefficiencies. They were gambling that 15 years of industry expertise could be replaced with software systems and standardized procedures, maximizing short-term profits while destroying the relationships that kept cargo moving efficiently through our ports. But they'd made one crucial mistake: they'd underestimated both my determination to fight back and the loyalty of the relationships I'd built over 15 years in this industry. Elena wasn't the only person who'd noticed Morrison's systematic targeting of experienced staff. Union leaders, shipping line executives, and even competing terminal operators had been watching the changes at Pacific Maritime with growing concern. The efficiency improvements I'd developed weren't just beneficial to our company, they'd become industry standards that kept the entire port operating smoothly. Over the next 2 weeks, I learned that Morrison's accusations weren't just wrong, they were provably fabricated. And subtly, the timeline he'd constructed fell apart under scrutiny. The Pacific Shipping Line's executive making the allegations had been hired just 3 months before the supposed bribery incident, despite having no maritime experience. The email evidence from my account had been sent using administrative access while I was documented as being off-site. Most importantly, the banking records he'd cited as evidence of bribery actually proved the opposite. They showed the regular pattern of performance bonuses I'd been receiving for 5 years, with amounts and timing that matched my employment contract exactly. Armed with this evidence, Sarah Kim filed a wrongful termination lawsuit that exposed Morrison's entire scheme. But the legal victory was just the beginning. Word spread quickly through the maritime industry about what had happened at Pacific Maritime, and the response surprised even Elena. Shipping line executives who'd worked with me for years began questioning their contracts with Pacific Maritime. Union leaders raised concerns about the company's labor practices with federal regulators. Competing terminals started recruiting Pacific Maritime's experienced staff, warning them about the ongoing corporate restructuring. The day I returned to the Pacific Maritime terminal to clean out my office, this time with legal representation and a court order, the operations floor felt different. Morrison was nowhere to be seen, having been quietly reassigned to special projects pending the completion of an internal investigation. Rebecca Walsh from HR had been replaced by someone who actually understood employment law. Most importantly, the Meridian integration had been suspended while federal investigators examined whether the company had violated maritime regulations during their acquisition and restructuring efforts. As I packed the last of my personal items from the office I'd occupied for 8 years, Elena appeared in my doorway with a smile I hadn't seen since before Morrison's arrival. The union filed a complaint with the Department of Transportation about Morrison's integration plan, she reported. Turns out that replacing experienced coordinators with inexperienced staff violates several federal safety requirements for port operations. The whole restructuring plan is being reviewed by federal regulators. She paused, then added with satisfaction, and 3 shipping lines have already indicated they're considering moving their operations to competing terminals if Morrison remains in charge. The settlement negotiations lasted another month, but the outcome was never really in doubt. Pacific Maritime's legal team knew that Morrison's scheme was not only illegal but had potentially exposed the company to federal penalties for violating maritime safety regulations. They offered a settlement that included full reinstatement, back pay with interest, a formal apology, and Morrison's immediate termination. More importantly, they agreed to abandon the corporate restructuring plan that would have eliminated 40% of experienced staff across all terminals. But the real victory came 6 months later when I was offered a position as Regional Operations Director for West Coast Maritime Solutions, Pacific Maritime's largest competitor. The offer came with a 30% salary increase, equity in the company, and the opportunity to build a logistics operation from the ground up using everything I'd learned over 15 years in the industry. Alina joined me as Senior Operations Manager, and together we've created what industry publications are calling the most efficient port coordination system on the West Coast. Looking back now, I realize that Morrison's betrayal was actually the best thing that could have happened to my career. His attempt to destroy me for corporate convenience exposed the fundamental problems with treating experienced workers as disposable assets. The maritime industry depends on relationships, expertise, and institutional knowledge that can't be replaced with software or corporate restructuring. Companies that understand this thrive, while those that don't face exactly the kind of operational disasters that Pacific Maritime has been experiencing since their efficiency improvements were implemented. The most satisfying moment came 8 months after the settlement, when I was invited to speak at the International Maritime Logistics Conference in Seattle, the same conference where I'd presented Pacific Maritime's innovations just 2 years earlier. This time I was presenting West Coast Maritime's revolutionary coordination systems while Pacific Maritime struggled with port congestion, union disputes, and shipping line defections that had reduced their cargo volume by 30%. Morrison's replacement had been trying to repair the relationships he'd destroyed, but trust in this industry takes years to build and minutes to lose. During my presentation, I saw several Pacific Maritime executives in the audience, including the regional director who'd replaced Morrison. After my talk, he approached me with an offer to return to Pacific Maritime as Vice President of Operations, essentially Morrison's former position with significantly more authority and compensation. I thanked him politely and explained that I was quite happy building something new rather than trying to repair something that had been broken by corporate short-sightedness. The truth is, being betrayed by people I'd trusted for 15 years taught me lessons about corporate loyalty that I should have learned much earlier in my career. Companies are not families, and corporate executives will sacrifice experienced employees without hesitation if it serves their financial interests. But it also taught me that expertise and relationships are more valuable than job security, and that sometimes being forced out of a comfortable position opens doors to opportunities you never would have considered. Elena and I now mentor women entering the maritime industry, sharing not just operational expertise but hard-learned lessons about protecting yourself in corporate environments. We teach them to document everything, build relationships outside their immediate company, and never assume that 15 years of excellent performance reviews protect you from corporate restructuring. Most importantly, we help them understand that their expertise has value beyond any single employer, and that loyalty should be earned rather than assumed. The maritime industry has changed dramatically since Morrison's failed restructuring attempt. Other companies watched Pacific Maritime's decline and learned that replacing experienced staff with cheaper alternatives creates more problems than it solves. Several major shipping lines now include operational continuity clauses in their terminal contracts, specifically requiring that experienced coordinators remain in key positions. The federal government has implemented new regulations requiring minimum experience levels for certain port operations, effectively preventing the kind of mass layoffs Morrison had planned. If you're facing workplace betrayal, especially the kind of systematic corporate conspiracy I experienced, here's what I've learned. First, document everything from day one, not just after problems begin. Second, build relationships outside your immediate company so you have options when corporate loyalty disappears. Third, understand that fighting back isn't career suicide, it's career survival in an environment where companies view experienced employees as disposable assets. Fourth, never sign anything under pressure, especially NDAs that prevent you from exposing illegal behavior. Most importantly, remember that your expertise and relationships have value beyond any single employer. Morrison's betrayal forced me to realize that I'd been undervaluing my own contributions for years, accepting modest salary increases and limited authority while generating millions in efficiency improvements for the company. Sometimes it takes being pushed out to recognize that you deserve better than the corporate gratitude of people who view you as a budget line item rather than a valuable professional. The shipping industry continues to evolve, but the fundamental truth remains unchanged. Moving cargo efficiently requires experienced professionals who understand the complex relationships between ports, shipping lines, unions, and federal regulators. Software systems and corporate protocols can't replace the judgment that comes from 15 years of solving problems in real time. Companies that understand this prosper, while those that don't face the kind of operational disasters that have plagued Pacific Maritime since they decided that corporate efficiency was more important than operational expertise. Your career belongs to you, not to companies that view loyalty as a weakness to be exploited rather than a strength to be valued. Morrison's betrayal taught me that corporate environments often reward the wrong behaviors while punishing the qualities that actually make organizations successful. But it also showed me that expertise, relationships, and integrity create opportunities that corporate political games can never destroy. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to your career is being forced to leave a comfortable position that was limiting your potential without you realizing it. If you've experienced similar corporate betrayal, or if you're worried about protecting yourself in an environment where experience is viewed as a liability rather than an asset, please share your story in the comments below. Let me know where you're watching from and what industry you're working in. Subscribe for more stories about corporate accountability and protecting yourself in professional environments where loyalty flows only upward. Remember, your career is worth fighting for, and sometimes fighting back is the only way to move forward. The people who betrayed your trust are counting on you to disappear quietly. Don't give them the satisfaction.